Hey everyone, welcome to the Wild and Uncut podcast, brought to you by Ruger. I'm your host, Kristy Titus. Thank you for tuning in. The line is going hot, so let's go full send on this episode. In a world where rugged and reliable matters, Ruger stands strong. Celebrating 75 years of American-made craftsmanship, Ruger continues to set the standard for excellence in firearms. From the iconic 1022 to the American rifle and beyond, each firearm embodies precision engineering and our deep-rooted traditions. Join us in honoring a legacy built on strength, innovation, and the American spirit. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Wild Uncut podcast. I am in the home of Mark Kayser here in Sheridan, Wyoming. And Mark, you are an extraordinary outdoorsman. You're I would say mostly famous for being like this DIY, hardcore Western big game hunter that does a ton of how-to information, tips, tactics. You write, you kind of do it all, and you're that one-man band that goes out there on a mission and always tends to come home with a tag notched. And to a lot of us out there, that's something that we all aspire to. And so I am really thankful that you kind of carved out some time to sit down with me today and do this podcast.
I appreciate you inviting me on and all the kind words you just said. Basically, you could just boil it down to this crazy guy who goes out in the mountains all the time by himself.
Well, I pull in your driveway and there's shed antlers everywhere. I mean, it's a phenomenon to see like all of your shed antlers, and I don't know how many thousands of pounds you've collected, but
thousands,
literally thousands of pounds. And
that's just for fun.
Yes.
I just do it for fun.
It's your hobby.
I've never went out with a focus of picking up antlers. Now, sometimes you'll see on my posts and stuff, I'll pick up a shed antler and I'll say, that paid for fuel. But I don't know.
But you don't ever sell them. Mentally, you're like, this is the reward, but it's not going to equate to cash.
Someday that the return will be there.
Yeah. Your wife's like, I'm waiting for this day. It hasn't happened.
Yeah, all the piles of antlers. So
you write for a lot of publications, and then you also co-host some segments for Deer and Deer Hunting TV.
Yeah, I write for basically anybody in the hunting genre. Yeah. Anybody that, any magazine that's hunting, I'll write for them. And I have written for almost all of them at one point throughout my career. Right now, the big market where people see me a lot is the American Hunter, which is the NRA publication, which is the largest all hunting publication out there right now. So I'm in there almost every issue. I'm one of their field editors, but I do a lot of stuff for National Wild Turkey Federation. I'm a whitetail columnist for Bow Hunting World. So people, they kind of know me for elk, but there's another whole world out there. Yeah. People know me in the whitetail world because the minute I get done elk hunting, I pack up and I'm headed to the Midwest to chase whitetails for the rest of the season, basically. So, but you could just about pick any magazine out there. I do a lot of predator hunting content too, Predator Nation, Predator Extreme. Like I said, turkey and turkey hunting, which is part of the Deer and Deer Hunting family.
Sure.
And then I co-host some episodes on Deer and Deer Hunting Television. I do several hunts a year for them, and then I do a lot of content that they intersperse throughout all their episodes.
Yeah. So you're a busy guy.
Yeah, and this time of year, we're doing this, early spring right now. I'm busy writing, and when the weather's nice, I like to go up in the mountains and pick up antlers. And then once summer comes, I'm really focused on writing, and probably like you're setting up rifles, you're tuning your bow, doing all that stuff. And then when fall comes,
it's go time.
It's go time. And I just got to the point in my life and career where I shut my office down basically starting mid-August, for sure late August, but I still do a few things occasionally when I'm in, but I just focus and go
outdoors,
go hunting.
So one thing I really appreciate about your story is, you have accomplished so much in the DIY hunting space, and you're so successful. But what I love about your story is it's so inspiring because you did not come from a hunting background. So being successful in the field and being a successful hunter is something that you can aspire to, even if it's not something you've grown up with. And I would love it if you would kind of take our listeners and our viewers back to how you got started, what sparked your interest, because I think, as someone who is a hunter and we're wanting to grow this community and continue this time-honored tradition, is how do we spark that interest in people so that we have voters showing up that support hunting, or people that maybe are on that non-hunting or on the fence side, like how do we communicate with them? So what was the leading and contributing factors into, how you grew up versus how you ended up chasing birds and turkeys and deer in South Dakota?
So I grew up.
That was a long question.
I grew up in South Dakota, and I didn't grow. I grew up in whitetail country in the eastern part of the state. So I cut my hunting teeth on whitetails to begin with. That's where I started, in the cornfields. In fact,
was it a mentor situation?
No, it wasn't at all. It was. People always say, "Oh, it's just instinctive."
Yeah.
I just wanted to hunt. From a very young age, I was drawing. I was very creative. I should have brought my drawings up, showed you. These stick-like pheasants. I would draw pheasants all the time. Was my big thing, South Dakota pheasant hunting. So, and it was just coming out in me. My dad hunted. He took us hunting, but he never ever went hunting on his own. And if you go another step into my family, my grandfather was a hunter, but my grandfather was also, and nothing against this, he was a World War II veteran, but he was an alcoholic, and he never could kind of balance that out, and it ruined his body, so he couldn't hunt the way I kind of was aspiring to hunt. So one day, my dad had taken us, I'm going to back up just a little bit. My mom and dad took us out camping a lot, and they finally bought a property in the Black Hills of South Dakota with just a real rustic, primitive cabin on it. No running water, outhouse, that type of stuff. So I started getting the bug to live in the mountains, be in the mountains and stuff. So my dad would take us hunting, but he never really went hunting.
Yeah.
He would we had the rifles, he drove us up the mountain.
It was because you were interested in
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was being
a good dad.
Accommodating. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Being a good dad. And he was a good dad. And so I tried for like 4 years to kill a deer in the Black Hills. And there were deer there, but it wasn't great hunting, but it was okay. Couldn't get one killed. Well, then I went to a garage sale one summer. I think it was 15, if I remember. And I saw a bow and arrow laying in the garage, or at this garage sale, and they wanted, I don't even remember, $40 for it or something. And I was working. I worked since I could work. I worked every summer. So I had some money, bought that bow and arrow, started shooting it, didn't know anything about it. Nobody was coaching me. I'd go out behind my dad's shop. He owned a farm implement shop. Set up some bales and shot. Finally got good enough that fall. I killed my first deer ever with a bow and arrow. But it was my first deer, whether it was rifle or bow, the bow and arrow. And shot him at dark. Got 2 arrows into him, miraculously, and I needed it because the first one wasn't too good. And went in there to that field. It was dark then. By then, found the buck. It was a one-horned. I mean, literally that big horn, and the other one had been broke off from fighting or something. Drug him out. I put a flashlight in my mouth, opened a book, and I have that book up there too, on Outdoor Life, how to field dress a book, and field dress that book in the dark by myself. And then I had I don't know if you've ever seen these old International Scouts. and it had a roof rack, so I could lay down the tailgate, stand up on that, pull that deer up, and then I got him on the roof rack.
How old were you?
15. And then I drove, and you could hunt in South Dakota at that time, 14 by yourself.
And clearly drive, because where I'm from, you'd be 16 to drive.
Yeah, the same thing, 14, you could drive in the dark or whatever. And drove home and was proudest ever, and never stopped. I don't think I killed a deer that next year, but then after that I killed like 3 or 4 in a row, all with my bow again too, as I went through the end of high school and then started into college. So, and then through the years I went to college in eastern South Dakota, and then I went to I worked for the state of South Dakota doing marketing and tourism, and ended up in the middle part of the state along the Missouri River. And I love that Great Plains feel. Man, I just went nuts, hunting everywhere. My wife and I at the time, I talked a rancher into letting me live in an old abandoned ranch house.
I'm sure she loved that.
It was just dead mice on the floor.
That's what I mean, yeah.
But we got to live there for free.
Yeah, and she cleaned it up, I'm sure.
She did. Yeah. And so we lived there for several years now. I was just a hunting fool, and there's a couple whitetails on the wall back over there that I killed while we lived in that country. And then we moved off that ranch to another rural property, had our horses. My wife was a big horse nut, kind of like you. And so, but I still in the back of my mind is like, I want to hunt elk. And when you live in South Dakota, you can only get an elk license maybe once every 12, 14 years, the way the system's set up. And I was like, I just need to move out west and hunt elk. So we had lived in this new house we built, had our 2 children there, and just kept talking. We need to move. If we're going to move, we got to move before they get old and get set in their ways. Yeah, because they get in school, because then they're not going to want to move, and then you're the bad dad for moving your kids. So every summer and even during the winter, we'd take these road trips around, and we were kind of focused on Montana, Wyoming, and mainly Montana, because my brother lives in Montana, a few hours away from here. And long and behold, we found this spot here in Wyoming, and lived here ever since. And I hunt elk every year because of that. And this here elk came within, a short drive of the house right here. Most of these elk have.
Yeah, so, well, that's why I moved here as well. So I can be, I can hunt, I start antelope hunting, and I can go and hunt. And even deer hunting for archery this year was awesome. I was hunting deer, and I would go hunt until 9, 10, and then I would go have breakfast at my house and then go hunt. And same with antelope and elk. For me it was great because I could go in the bighorns and hunt and drive home and sleep in my bed at night. And exactly. And that has been the main reason I moved here was for opportunity, and because of my love of mules and being in the backcountry with them. It was just so friendly for that here, the lifestyle. So yeah, it's a great place to live. Extremely windy and cold, so not everybody can handle it here.
Well, this year I battled snow all winter.
It was really rough this year.
The year before was nice, but then in
the year before it was worse. Oh boy, it was worse.
My poor tractor almost left on its own. It was so mad.
It was well, and this year I have to tell you, this year I am exhausted with mud. Yeah. So my property, I have scoria and it's down, but anywhere there's not scoria, it is muddy. My truck right now, I don't even bother washing it anymore. The inside of it is, anything I touch at my property, I end up covered in mud. I get in my car, I smear mud on my steering wheel, on the driver door, on the seat, until the mud season's over. It's like, and it's exhausting to walk in, and I'm just like, okay, can the mud season please leave? Like, I am so done with mud season. Like, I love the snow. The snow is great. I can do anything in the snow. But when it's rain and mud, it's exhausting here. It's exhausting. It's so slick. But yeah, I'm off base here. But yes, it is a great place.
Wyoming is a beautiful place.
Sure.
It's unforgiving if you don't know how to handle it.
Sure.
I mean, you don't come here and just think it's going to be like people from California. That's the big joke, obviously. Yeah. Don't Californicate my Wyoming. You gotta want to live here and be able to adapt to the harsh environment. So
yeah, well, because it's minus 30 in the winter. This year we hit minus 20, almost minus 30 a couple of days, and then in the summer it's 105. So you have everything in between.
Yeah. And then the gumbo.
And then the mud gumbo. Yeah, that's where I'm over that. But so you guys moved here for the same reasons I moved here. It's just a great place to live, small community, and lots of hunting opportunity and proximity to Montana. So you can non-resident hunt, Montana, and it's not a far drive either, which is pretty beautiful.
Half these bulls are Montana bulls too. So
I'm collecting my points there.
Yeah, this is a nice location, and the mountain view, it's beautiful mountain view, and the mountains are accessible, but they're still backcountry.
Sure.
I mean, I do, like I said, do a lot of backcountry hunting, and I can stay in a fairly comfortable camp, but be in the backcountry fairly easily too. There's nice transition areas,
So you write a lot of tips, tactics, how-tos. We're just coming out of predator season, and you have this great dog, and you two, the two of you, your team, Genuine. I see photos of you sitting in the snow, camoed out, and your dog is with you, and that's pretty special. You're going out there and you're hunting coyotes with your dog as a decoy, and your dog is a border collie mix, or
he's a border collie, but he's not papered. So
but he is smart, and the two of you are a pretty contentious team on the coyotes. So walk people through a little bit about your coyote hunting and some of the stuff you do on that side, and maybe a couple of tips for newbies out there, because that's kind of your game. Is tip world. You've got lots of information.
In the heart of the wilderness, every step counts. No matter where or what you're hunting, OnX Hunt Elite has you covered in the US and Canada with offline capability, land ownership, 3D mapping, and you can even access specialty courses, hunt research tools, and elite specific features. No matter where you pursue the wild, adventure is assured when you upgrade to Elite for the ultimate hunting experience.
So coyote hunting is getting harder. Coyotes are getting smarter. There's more people hunting them, and they're almost like elk. They're transitioning to be a little bit more difficult animal to hunt in the last decade, is what I've discovered. So the dog aspect of it for me is just for fun.
It's rewarding.
Yeah, it's just, and I have somebody to go. It's just like when I go out in the mountains.
You're not alone.
Shed antler hunting or whatever. Yep. He wants to go every morning, and if I see an opening in my calendar and the weather looks good and I'm in between assignments, I can go. Where if I got a buddy in town or something,
you gotta wait.
It's just always this scheduling conflict. So I'm not real social, except with the dog.
I can relate to that, Mark. I get it.
So he's a partner. He goes with me. Sure. I don't use him all the time, but he's with me almost all the time. And he doesn't screw things up because border collies are smart. If you train him if he's trained right, and most dogs, if you train them right, you can use them for a lot of things. But so times when I want him to decoy, he'll decoy. Times when I want him to engage the coyote, he will. Times where that coyote's coming in and I can just see this is a slam dunk. I don't need to screw it up with the dog. I just whisper to him, because he lays, knock this elk down. He lays right beside me. So I talk to him just like I'm talking to my partner. He is my partner. And I'll just say, and his name is Sully. And I'll say, Sully, stay. And he'll stay. But there's a lot of times I'll be looking around and I'll let him sit up. Most time I like him to lay, keep a low profile. But sometimes I'll let him sit up if there's enough sage and he's in snow. He's black and white, so he mixes in well. And there'll be times we're just sitting there and all of a sudden I hear,
and a coyote's coming.
And he's seen a coyote that I haven't seen. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times I'll, in between calling, I'll do a quick glass, slow, quick zoom, and I'll spot a coyote out there half, 3/4 mile, coming in and before he does. But there are so many times
that dog will find him.
He'll see him before. And then there's a lot of times that we don't kill coyotes, that they're coming in behind us downwind. Mm-hmm. It's big country. You just can't cover it all by yourself. Even with a partner, it's tough to cover. But he'll growl and then he'll stand up and he'll look behind me like he's setting up the perimeter to defend. He's always defending the perimeter. Is his deal. But there's a lot of times that I just let him sit up. if a coyote stalled out there, especially when they're challenge howling or during breeding season, I'll just let him sit up, and then I'll say, go this way, and pace in front of us. And it's that movement that ticks there's just some of those coyotes
can't handle it.
They can't handle it. Now, a lot of those younger coyotes don't want to come in for an actual fight, but they'll come in to look, and they'll come into 100 to 200 yards depending on their, or 300, but 100 to 300 yards depending on how bold and dominant they are. So if there was a tip that I would tell people nowadays to kill more coyotes is walk a little further from the road, unless you know there's coyotes hanging by the road. I killed one right off a county road this year, not on the road, but I mean, it was the public land touched up against it, and I was able to just go off 100 yards off and call the coyote right up, because I knew they were coming in and out of this area because of a cattle pattern. They were coming down to check the cattle. But most of the time, I'm about a mile away from any road. And then I usually do dawn and dusk sets. I like because I think coyotes have that confidence boost, unless they're in an area, and this is public land for the most part, unless they're in an area where they're not being hunted. But that's when they're moving. They're starting to move more.
Sure.
And they have that confidence that it's a little dark. So I would say walk a little further away from the road, try dusk and dawn calling. I kill almost all mine right at sunrise. Before the sun even comes up, I've usually, when I kill a coyote, same with elk, I kill a lot of my elk, in the first 20 minutes of shooting light. And then the other thing is wait longer on your sets, depending on what you use for calls. But I do a lot of vocalizations because I got the dog, and I'll even set a decoy up. I use the Montana decoy, the sitting coyote decoy. Real realistic. Although if the coyote comes at the wrong angle, it won't see it. But if they're coming straight on, so usually I set a decoy off one side, have the dog over here, do my vocalizations, howling, and then I wait always. No matter what sounds I'm using, a minimum of 1 hour. And I kill more coyotes consistently from the 30 to 60 minute mark than I do the 5 to 10. But I don't always go into hardcore prey and distress, because I feel like that's what everybody's doing. So I really like the vocalization aspect and starting to talk to the coyotes. I mean, a lot of times I'll converse with them for 20 minutes before they make that appearance right close enough to shoot.
Well, where I live, I mean, my place, I have 255 acres, but I'm surrounded by thousands of acres of privately held ranch. So I literally there's no neighbors, no people around me. It's very remote. And I hear the coyotes at dusk. They do not make a noise during the day. I mean, if I keep saying, I'm going to stay, till dusk, and because I'm always out there till dark with the mules, and I think, well, I'm just going to stay later tonight and bring my green light, because I can call after dark on my place, and I always end up and I haven't done it, but that's been my thing, is I need to just get my green light. I got a new freak call from Gary Robertson, and the frequency call, and which is ultrasonic sounds, and I really want to give that thing a shot, and I'm gonna do it, and then I get derailed, and I'm gonna miss the peak of the season here if I'm not careful.
Well, the nice thing about coyote hunting though anymore,
it's year-round.
Year-round. So,
doesn't matter.
So I mean, right now I kind of focus a little more on getting office work done and picking up an antler, when I want to. But as soon as they start denning and stuff, I'll take Sully out again, and that's where it can get real exciting, because those coyotes will come in head to head then, and because they're defending their area. And I don't know if you saw it when you showed up here today, but Sully's back, he bristles it.
I see that, yeah.
He gets just real, and when he gets on a coyote like that, every hair on his body is standing up.
Turns like a little porcupine.
And he's bold. He takes on, our neighbor's got a big Pyrenees, a white Pyrenees dog, and he's not afraid to go head to head with that dog at all and stand there real dominant and walking around it. And so he's kind of probably too cocky for his pants.
Well, that's the way my toy Aussie is. She thinks she's 10 pounds of fury, and she thinks she is really tough, and she's not. I'm like, I had to get a little shock collar and light her up. She has a mini shock collar, because she's just a year old. And last summer I took her on a pack trip, and my girlfriend and I packed in outside of Cody, and the fog lifted, and there was a herd of about 50 elk that had come in, and she didn't have recall. She was like 8 months old, and not good enough recall, I should say. And she takes off after this herd of elk, and they turned and they were going to take her down, and she comes running back to camp, and I'm like, okay, so I got a shock collar for her now, and the first deer she thought she was going to take on, I lit her little tiny butt up, and she does not chase deer anymore. No more trash chasing at my house. But I had to do the same thing with the mules. She's wanting to kind of go at their feet, thinking she's tough, and so I had to light her up. I'd rather light her up with the shock collar than have a deer stomper or a mule kicker, because she's 10 pounds, and she thinks she's really tough. But she's, same affinity. Cow dogs think that they have to think they're tough. They're, contending with animals that are thousands of pounds.
Exactly.
So, they gotta have some machismo in them, So, no, that's really exciting. And I love when you do your coyote posts. I get a kick out of all of them. It's really a lot of fun, and watching your success with you and your dog. And then I always have a little bit of envy, like, man, I should be out doing that. I live in the same town as him, and look, he's out killing coyotes, and I'm in the office I don't even know whatever I'm doing, but you're out there and you make it a priority. And that's one thing, it seems to me like, you have a passion, and you kill your coyotes within the first, hour of daylight, then, maybe you're getting up earlier and getting back here and doing work by 10 a.m.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I usually try to get back by midday, whatever I'm doing. On the coyote thing, now the shed antler thing, when I'm doing elk,
those are all days.
Yeah, you just got to commit the whole day to it. And there's, I get up real early then. I try to be at my location. I want to start looking as the sun breaks over the mountain, right as the pre-dawn is breaking, and the same with elk hunting. That's that's an overall tip I share, or would like to share with people, is no matter if it's whitetail, antelope, elk, I like to be, especially on public lands, I like to try to get ahead of the crowd.
Sure.
And I think you're getting in position at the place where you think you're going to ambush them as they're transitioning, and they still feel confident to move in those first 10 minutes of shooting light.
Well, and you're moving into that position under the cover of darkness, hopefully using the wind to whatever advantage you can anticipate to the best you can, and you're already there when they're moving through, and you're not walking through as they're walking through, and makes sense.
So the bull I shot this year in Wyoming, I got in there almost an hour before shooting light, and I slept on this rock slope. I had to cross a big opening to get to where I wanted to be, and then I was debating, should I go up to the next slope where I'd seen elk, or just hold off here and make my move at dawn? And so I thought, no, I'll just hold off, because I was thinking maybe I'd accidentally walk into elk. So I laid on this rock bench, got set up prone just in case, and as light come up I could start seeing elk probably 30 minutes almost before shooting light, and I was surrounded. And by the time shooting light come up, I had 7 bulls I'd counted, and I was trying to figure out which one to shoot. And then, and it was kind of cloudy enough yet, but I still couldn't, even at shooting light, I didn't feel confident taking that first shot. And so I waited, I think it was like 7 minutes in before I kind of finally saw the bull that was dominant. He was pushing some other bulls around, and I was surprised this big bull's in the herd. A lot of times.
That late in the year especially.
Yeah, like this bull here, I killed him same date and everything. He was by himself with another bull. They had already broke off. But that bull that I killed last year, I think, was the same age as this. They're 6-7-year-old bulls, I suspect, at minimum. I should get their teeth age. But whitetail hunting, I like to get in a tree stand. If the weather will allow, if it's 30 below, it's tough to get in that early.
Sure.
But where I hunt, a lot of times, I hunt a lot of Kansas. It'll be 40, 50 degrees in the morning. You go sit in the tree stand. So I'll get in there at least a half hour before shooting light and let everything settle down. A lot of times I have deer walking under me, and antelope, same thing. Get back in where I want to be, into a basin, let the light come up around. And then if you do see an antelope a little further away, or a mule deer, you've got a little bit of that darkness and time to make a move. So.
I did that this year in Wyoming here. I hunted in the city limits of Wyoming. I got registered at the police station, and I did a bow hunt in town, and I was running a little late one morning, and it's just the worst feeling. I got halfway up my ladder stand and deer started moving underneath me, and I literally had to hang on to my ladder stand, and I couldn't move, and it was the most aggravating thing. And I'm like, Kristy, you idiot. Like, when you're running late like that, you're almost better off just not even going, because then I'm trying to get in the stand and get settled and moving, and there's deer that could visibly see me, and you really have to be in that situation. In my opinion, you need to be a good half hour early to get in,
because you don't want to create a pattern where they're patterning you then.
Well, and then once they know what the deal is, they start looking for you, and you educate these deer, and that becomes generational education, especially in an area you plan to hunt again, and it's not a good thing to do is educate the deer.
Oh,
and I'm really particular. I won't even get in a deer stand, or I was hunting a mule deer this year, which I did not get him, but it was a 180 type mule deer, and I wouldn't even think about trying to hunt him on a wind that was questionable. I just thought, well, no, I'm going to hunt him like a whitetail. And if this were a whitetail deer stand, I wouldn't even consider getting in my stand for this buck in this wind. And I'm not even going to consider even going to look for him, because why ruin your odds?
Right.
When everything lines up, let it line up and go kill them. Don't go blow around. And that's what I think one of the big mistakes you see on public land is like, well, I see the elk or I see the deer, see whatever, and the wind's at my back, but somebody else is going to get to them first. And it's like, man, like patience can be your best advantage.
Yeah. It's always a gamble, and you're always weighing the wind and public hunting pressure and everything. But sometimes if you do just hold off 1 day or 2 days, and or even if you pass an animal, if you've got that much confidence or experience, I've shot 4 or 5 deer like this. I'm gonna pass this one and keep pushing it. So I don't want to, create a pattern here that they know I'm around.
Sure.
And I see that a lot with outfitters too, and nothing against them, because they got to it's a business, so they've got to be running hunters through. But I noticed that on some of the stands I've sat over the years, that they've run a lot of guys through some of those stands.
Yeah, those stands are pretty warm when you get in them.
Those deer are skirting it, they're understanding, and until you get the luck of the rut or something where a buck is running blind, chasing a doe, and all of a sudden he shows up under you. If it's just right before the rut and right after it, it can be hard to kill that deer unless he's in that blind love fog or whatever. I
had a luck of the rut this year. I sat a stand that we went back and looked at the camera, and there hadn't been a deer under it in a month. And I look up and 6 does are running through, and there's a buck right behind him. And the deer ran right underneath my stand, and I drew on the buck at 30, and they all bolted except for 2 does. There were so many, 2 of them were confused, like, well, what just happened? They didn't see me draw. And the buck came back, and I killed that deer just because he was dumb. And I'm like, and that was December. I'm like, I love a dumb deer. I will take the dumb luck, but it is very difficult to count on dumb luck.
Oh yeah, it's.
You can wait a lot of days for dumb luck, and that's not fun either.
And sometimes you need it, but I'd rather hunt on a strategy. Everything's strategy based to start with. And, and then hope the luck rolls. It's a
little strategy and a little luck combined equates to more success. So your heart is in elk hunting, and you are a solo elk hunter, and that, especially with a bow, is no easy feat. I hunt with my dad a lot, and I'll do a lot of calling for him. So, my dad's had a lot of opportunity with elk in his lap, because I'll call, and he'll call for me a bit, but he's hearing impaired, so it's very difficult for him to maybe make the moves to pull the bull by me.
Right.
Because he can't really hear what's going on. So he can make the sounds well, but actually having the follow through to do the rest is a little challenging on that side. So archery elk hunting solo is really difficult. How do you feel you have mastered that so well?
I'd say I haven't mastered it.
Okay, I hear you on that one. Yeah.
One of the things I do now, though, is I move all the time. I'm constantly like you're having with your dad.
Yeah. Call and move 20 yards to the downwind side and kind of just
shifting.
Yeah.
And those bulls are doing this. If they are coming, they're doing the same thing. They're constantly trying to get the wind in their favor.
Sure.
So you're trying to be just one step ahead of them. So the old days where you just sit down and call to a bull, which could happen on the Vermejo Ranch, Ted Turner's place, New Mexico, which probably does. But
out here, it's tough.
On public land, it's not happening anymore. Calls still work. The bulls may or may not respond vocally, but you know, I have a lot of bulls come in silent, which I'm sure you've had the same thing. But I'll call and then I move, call and move, and it's downwind.
Towards that downwind.
Angle. And
it can only be as small as like 20, 30 yards. It doesn't have to be a big move.
Doesn't have to be a big move. And the terrain tells you too. You know, should I sit here because it's a little too open? Maybe I want to move 100 or 150 yards or whatever because I need that screen of cedars or whatever. So, and then a lot of times, once I get them located, I almost always locate them with my, you know, unless they're bugling. But a lot of times once I get them located, you know, with my initial calls and talk back a little bit just to kind of gauge their excitement level, if they keep bugling, I shut up.
Yeah, I agree.
So half of the bulls, like that bull right there, you know, he bugled a lot. I started him off in the morning in the dark, and we went back and actually we passed in the dark. He got by me and went up another mountain, and I got over the other side of the mountain. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's over there.
Yeah, and you called him right over there.
That's a good happen.
Yeah.
And but then he bugled just enough after that. He got kind of charged up right at daybreak that I let him do all the bugling, and then another hunter come in and started doing the. I'm going to sound like a boy band thing, and too much calling. And I was watching the whole herd, that herd bull, another satellite, and 7, 8 cows. And when that guy started going, and he was like 300-400 yards above us, he must have heard the bugle, but he hadn't seen him. And I'm sitting here watching the elk. They're at a little watering hole. They're watering, and I'm trying to figure out my next move to get the shot. That cow, the lead cow,
got nervous. She didn't like it.
She was drinking. She lifted her head up, and he hadn't drank yet. And I knew he was wanting to drink. And she lifted her head up, did kind of like one of these, and gone. She knew it was another hunter, or it was hunting pressure, or maybe she knew something was not right. And she took that whole herd off and around, and he bugled twice on the leaving, and never would bugle again. And I just had to use intuition then to follow him. And I got to one point where there was a big canyon where we had crossed in the dark before, and I could see it was fairly open over there, and I was like, he didn't cross this. They couldn't get that far ahead of me. I would see him going up that next mountain. And so I thought they just ducked into a little coulee, and I smelled them. It took me about an hour or so, but as I was going along, I was like, whoa, they're right here. And I just crept over, and he was down that basin, and finally walked out and let me have a shot. And so calling plays a big significant role. You just got to be savvy, move. If they're calling, maybe let them do the work. That another bull over on that side, same things. I just let them come to me bugling the whole way, and they kind of got close to me and they started shutting up, but they were shifting around in this area trying to find bedding, and I was watching elk just pass by me in thick timber, and before long he come around a corner. He almost walked over me. He was at 8 yards at one point, coming around in front of me. So, and another little thing, he spooked, and I've had this happen 2 or 3 times now. He saw me coming around a knob. You know how they roll the whites of their eyes? And I don't have many elk mounts, but I like to always have them with the whites of their eyes showing. And he saw me and bolted. And I drew, because I knew I could hear him coming, so I'd already had an arrow knocked. And when he took off running, I've done this I think 3 times now, mewed at him. And they don't know quite what's going on, what they saw. If they haven't smelled you, and he hadn't smelled me, and he just hit the brakes, and just as he skidded to a halt to look, give me a perfect quarter and away shot at 30 yards. So you can, even if you think, oh, it's over, I blew it, they're running off. Elk, and I've done it to whitetails too, you can stop and pause them with the right sound, a grunt, a cow mew, whatever. And at that point, I tell people to practice your calls with your mouth.
I tried that this year. I have an ambush point that the elk were not talking. It was really hot. There was a lot of hunting pressure. And I told my dad and my cameraman, I said, well, there's a pinch point right here. And if there's elk in here, they will cross this to go bed in this bottom. They will if there's elk. If there's not, we'll just sit here. Well, sure enough, all these cows come through, and they come through trotting. They're on a clip, and I didn't even have my bow ready. And so I knock an arrow really quick when the cows go by, and this bull is chasing them, and he's 20 yards from me, and he's on a clip. And I'm mewing, trying to stop him. And he finally stops, just no shooting lane now. I'm like, I'm like, how dumb am I to sit here knowing elk are going to cross? And I didn't knock an arrow when I sat down. And I thought, well, I'll see them or hear them coming through the timber. But they ran through so fast that then I was late. And I don't know that I could have stopped him in my lane anyway. He was really after these cows. But it is good. You think about that, taking stuff for granted. When you're in elk country, and I've done this a million times, I'll sit down for a snack or a break, and you throw your bow down and you set it down out of reach. And you don't even think about it. You're like, well, I don't, whatever. I'm elk hunting, but you get a little sloppy. And that is one mistake I don't make anymore, setting my bow down out of reach. If I'm hunting, my bow is always within reach, because you never know when an elk can walk out and.
Exactly.
This year, even though my bow was in reach, I'm like, this was stupid. I should have just had an arrow knocked and been sitting. And
that's what I tell my partners too, because I'll have guys that'll hunt with me and they'll just lay down. There's, elk hunting's exhausting.
Yeah.
And they'll just lay down and they'd take
That's what my dad was doing. He laid down, he's on his back, and he's like, and I'm like, don't move. And he's like, cannot move.
So I always tell him, I said, set your bow up, jam a stick into it, however, lean against brush with it knocked.
That's right.
At least you got that part ready, because you just, during the rut, it can just happen in an instant.
Yeah. No, it cost me a nice 6-point bull with my bow this year.
Huh. Yeah. But you won't do it again.
I will hunt that spot again, but I will not make that mistake again. That was just so neglectful on my part and dumb. And, I should have just been ready. And instead of being ready, I was just, I'm fine. And no, that was not the answer. So
one of my best stories that goes along with that is I saw some bulls off this cliff. They were way down below me, or bulls and cows, and bugling. And it took me cliffing to get down to them. The pretty big part of the morning. Mid-morning, get down there, nothing. But as I get down to where they were, looking at the sign, I could hear this. And I'm like, God, there must be a bear up there doing something. And it was in these benches, dark timber, and I'd been through there several times, and I knew the elk used it, and it's like, well, that's where I'm going anyway, to sit for the rest of the day until they fire up again. So I went up in there, and I found a nice bench with beds where they had been the last week, and I got on a log, knocked an arrow, took some trail mix out, and I carry a little radio. I listen to the radio a lot, in one ear and then leave the other one out. So I'm listening to, at the time, I think it was like Rush Limbaugh or something on, and I'm sitting there eating some trail mix, and my bow's just right here on a dead log, and all of a sudden I hear that, and I'm like, what? And it's real close, and I look over, here's a 6-point bull 20 yards away, and there's cows behind him and some spikes, and they're all just kind of working through the timber. And he comes by me at like 12 yards, and you know what he's doing, and this is why it's important to spend so much time in the woods. But when you get those little rains in the timber, the pine needles and stuff, you get those fungus things that grow up, the white ones. He was eating those.
And then coughing.
And he's getting all the duff and dirt in his throat, and he's actually sneezing is what it turned out to be, a sneeze. But he was digging those up, and they all were. But he was right ahead. He was in front. He was like, I'm getting them before the rest of these guys do, and worked by me. And because I had my arrow knocked and everything, I just had to barely make minimum moves and just kind of shift around as he went behind me. He went from like I don't know, he was at 20, and I think he might have got into 12, but I shot him at about 30 is what it ended up being. So I was just sitting there trying to relax, eat some trail mix, listen to the weather or whatever on the radio, and you just never know what's going to happen.
You just don't know. You can almost never, it seems to me, as soon as I've let my guard down, that's when it all breaks loose.
And whitetail, same way. You know, on a whitetail stand, midday can be, especially during the rut, can be one of the best times to, that whitetail right there, this one here, he was killed high noon, you know, chasing a doe out of a cornfield in Iowa, so.
There are a lot of Americans that understand the value of hunting, but we all know that right now, national support of hunting is extremely volatile. It seems that with every passing day, our voice is diminished and the court of public opinion is not effectively hearing our side. We need advocates working on our behalf in Washington, D.C. to defend our freedom to hunt. And thankfully, when we need it the most, we have that advocate in Safari Club International. SCI's world headquarters are located in Washington, D.C., just blocks from the United States Capitol, which means that SCI is on the ground with our congressional leaders and federal agencies on our behalf, on behalf of the hunting community. SCI has an active political presence in all 50 states through their extensive chapter network and government affairs staff. If you have ever wondered why you should be a member of SCI, you shouldn't wonder anymore. Join us in the fight to defend hunting. Go to safariclub.org to learn more.
Yeah, those dark to dark sits for whitetail. Thank God the days are short.
It's getting hard for me to do them anymore, but there's times when I'll stay until almost noon, take a quick break, and then get right back in the stand. I think that little recharge, and you know, you and I have a different lifestyle because we're hunting a lot more probably than the average guy. I mean, I know people hunt hard. There's people out there that hunt a lot harder than me, but the average guy, you know, is he's getting the week vacation. He might break it into whatever type situations, but when you go, you know, when you start in August, start hunting, and by the time December rolls around, it's hard to be out there all day, especially as the weather gets worse and everything.
That's what happened with me this year. I had a target buck for my whitetail in Wyoming, and the neighbor got the deer. I should have had the deer, but I had him 20 yards from under my stand, bedded with a doe, and the tree was between me and the deer, and I couldn't get an arrow around the tree to shoot the deer, and I ended up not getting the deer, but the neighbor got the deer. And then I find myself in the tree one day and it's 13 degrees outside and I'm freezing. And I had broke my finger this fall, and my finger, I could not get it warm because it wouldn't bend. And it was throbbing and it hurt so bad. And this buck comes through and I pass him. I'm like, I'm not going to shoot that deer. Well, then he comes back through again, and I don't pass him. And then he fights another deer at 20 yards in front of me, and they're just locked up. And then another deer runs in, and it's just all this chaos. And he comes by my stand at 20 yards again, and I'm like, you know, this is God telling me that at this point I have 3 more days to hunt and I'm cold, and you just put on a heck of a show. So guess what? I drew down and shot that deer because, you know, at some point you're like, what am I holding out for? Like, this is dumb. How many people would pass on a mature, 4 or 5-year-old whitetail that many times because it's not, it was just kind of a coal buck? And I thought, this is dumb. I'm going to shoot you. Today was a good day. So I did. I shot that deer, and I was very grateful, actually, because...
I just wrote an article yesterday. I was writing about that. You got to know when to press the trigger and drop the string. It's just, especially on, and this was more associated with elk, but it's the same with deer. But, public land elk, in most situations, if you get a nice 5-point raghorn in front of you, you should probably be shooting that bull. I mean, holding out for the way the pyramid is. There's very few of those older bulls at the top. A lot of them in the middle and lower part. But unless you saved up your preference points, you know, cashed in for 20 years of preference points or something. Any good 5-point on public land. You've done something few people are doing. 20% of the population or less are actually successful, and you're getting something that's just great to eat.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. Well, and that's, I think, the other thing that being in media and TV and kind of doing this professionally, there is a bit of pressure. You know, you see these people that have the extraordinary opportunities for hunting that aren't necessarily hunting public, and they're killing, you know, 170 to 200 inch whitetail, which I have killed one 170 whitetail now. Very rare. I mean, it's not like you're killing 170 inch deer on the regular, but it sets this almost unrealistic standard for people like, oh, well, you know, it's, you know, now for me, I hunt for age.
That's kind of my goal too.
And if I feel like a deer's old enough and I feel good about it, Brendan, the gentleman that's off camera here doing the podcast, he was with me and I had a rifle and I passed my number 2 deer this year with a rifle. And he stood there at 60 yards for 10 minutes and I had a rifle and Brendan was filming and we let that deer walk and I'm like, that might not have been real smart. It was the second biggest deer that I had on my trail camera, but I was hunting a specific deer. And I thought, you know, I've spent all season, I obsessed all of September, and you have to be willing to accept the fate of not filling a tag when it was a mid 150s type deer. It was a decent deer. I ended up killing on the last day we packed in. On the last day, the last 30 minutes of season, we found just an ancient, probably 7 or 8 year old mule deer buck, big, wide, one of the biggest deer I've ever killed body-wise. If he'd have been a 4-point, he'd have been a 180-inch deer. But he was a big, old 3x3, and I shot him with glee. He was old and mature giant and big, and just probably wouldn't score worth a darn, but that is a deer I'm excited to shoot. This other one, I'm like, man, in 2 years, this other deer is going to be something, you know, and that, you know, when you are hunting, you have to weigh that out. Like, and I think there's different levels of hunting. You know, when you're beginning, you want to harvest, you know, rich environments, you know, places where you can go and harvest, target rich environment. And then as you get older, you're like, well, you know, what you look at changes. And I think that's kind of that's the phases of being a hunter. So you have to be really happy with what phase in hunting you are. If you're a beginning hunter and you go shoot a spike bull and that's the most excited you've ever been, do it. It's great to eat.
High five.
Yeah, 100%. For me, you know, when I go out now and I see a young 5x5, I'm still passing, you know, but if I'm with somebody else, you know, they might, but I'm okay accepting eating a tag. So you have to go into your hunt, I think, with that perception of where am I at in hunting? How disappointed am I going to be if I pass a 4-year-old deer or elk and then I go home with nothing? Will I kick myself over it? And there is a lot to be said for don't pass on the first day what you'd shoot on the last. There's a lot to that, you know. It is a tough call.
It is very tough, and I think what you're saying there, as far as where are you at in your hunting experience and career, kind of dictates what you want to take, whether or not you can live with filling that tag. And then another thing in this day and age, it doesn't play a huge role, but a little bit of a role is just having some meat in the freezer.
Yeah.
You know, as expensive as meat has been lately, with inflation and everything, man, you shoot. You know, like in Wyoming, you get some leftover doe tags, and in some instances, you can shoot a whitetail buck and a mule deer buck.
Sure, that's what I've been doing, is killing 2 a year.
Exactly, and then the same with the elk. You can get a cow elk tag, and you know, you put a couple animals in the freezer. That means a lot. Even if you don't like venison, as far as just it's just the best thing ever. But if you just use it in some simple things like tacos and chili and stuff, you don't realize it's venison, and it's good protein. Yeah. And we live for quite a few years now entirely on elk for the most part.
I keep elk and whitetail.
Yeah.
I'm really good at doing the meat exchange on the mule deer. There's Buffalo or Bighorn Meats does this deal where you bring in meat and then they'll give you they take all the meat, and I call it mystery meat, and they make summer sausages and pepperoni, and they just take whatever everybody trades and they make it into sausage and pepperoni. You have no idea what you're eating. It could be bear, it could be antelope, it could be elk. It's mystery meat for real. But I take my mule deer and I donate for the mystery meat because the pepperonis and the salamis are so good. And so I do that with mule deer, but I keep elk and whitetail for myself personally. That's my go-to.
And you were mentioning earlier, we're a little bit about how we get new hunters started. That's an easy way to get somebody interested, is just handing them some salami, some Polish sausage made out of elk or antelope, just a package of elk burger, and say, put a little seasoning on that, throw it on the grill. You're going to have some of the best burgers you've ever had. And I do that over the years, even with not only sharing equipment or gear, meat, but equipment. If I know a young hunter that's kind of got an interest in turkey hunting or whatever, hey, here's a box call and an old decoy I'm not going to use. Here's some camouflage. I got bags of camouflage.
You and me both.
Here's some camouflage, you can use. Here, you need some shotgun shells, and I'll even loan them a firearm if they need it for the season, So there's ways to get people interested in that hunting genre and everything without taking them, although that's another big step. If you can take them out hunting and their parents are, in favor of it, or the parents go with you.
Well, in Wyoming and across the country, there's a program called the First Hunt Foundation. And any age, any gender, if you want to go on your first hunt, they have mentors that are, they're vetted mentors. They're not just random people. They have to go through a qualification process and background checks, but they have mentors that will help you become a hunter, help you with the skills, help you with getting gear. And it's a really incredible organization for people that really have that desire. And I think like what you were talking about as a boy, bringing that deer home to your parents. For young kids to go and harvest an animal, process the animal, and bring it home to their mom. For a lot of little boys, it's like that. It's that switch that goes from you are a boy to a man. I've just now become a provider.
Provider, exactly.
And that's really anchored in the DNA, mostly of men, but of even as a woman. I mean, it's in my DNA. I can't explain it, but being a provider. And I am fortunate like you to get to do a lot of hunting, so I donate a lot of meat.
Yeah.
Most of my meat's donated. My parents are on the receiving end of a lot of that. The trouble anymore, and this is a really sad situation that we're in, is like you go in the Midwest and there used to be a lot of programs where you could donate deer. For example, the processing place that I take my deer to in Missouri, they used to process over 150 donated deer a year, and they would distribute that meat throughout their communities. Well, CWD is required testing now, and they have no way to store the deer in refrigerated setting while they await the testing. And so now it's become where you almost have to do a direct donation. And so if you want to donate meat, and you are going hunting and you are going, somewhere in the Midwest or anywhere, and you can't bring that meat home, really, try to reach out to a local church or people in the community and find homes that can use that meat, because those locations now in Wyoming, we're lucky we still have that program. Jeannie Gordon created that program here in Wyoming, so we can still share in the harvest on that, but many states can't.
Oh yeah.
And so asking some questions, getting some resources locally, ask your meat processing plant, reach out to churches, and find those families that can benefit from your hunt. If you can't return with your harvest, it's a great way to feel like you're providing, especially for people that otherwise might go without. which is big.
I've gotten on some, because I see it all the time too, especially as a traveling hunter. You're just going from a state to a state. There's just no way to keep meat cool. One of the groups that I've got that almost always takes meat for me is my cameraman.
Yes.
So I always tell them, I said, bring your cooler, we'll debone the buck.
Yeah, and take it home.
Last 5, 6 years, I've been lucky. They've been taking the majority of them, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
The meat's going to, to their families and them. So
it's a great feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
Another thing that I don't want to keep bringing up topics, but for young hunters to get excited, a big obstacle now, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, and it's kind of gotten to be a passion of mine, is they've got to have a place to hunt.
Yes.
And the public lands are getting more crowded. As more people do wildlife management on their properties, they tend to shut it down to, whereas before you could knock on a door and, hey, like antelope used to be nothing. You could go anywhere and hunt antelope and even whitetails. And it's just getting harder and harder. And I think the states, we all need to be aware that you can have public lands, but as more and more people go to those public lands, it gets harder to have a successful hunt. And you don't have to necessarily be successful on a hunt to enjoy it, but boy, to get somebody hooked, they've got to get that first pheasant or that first deer or that first turkey in the spring. Eventually, if they keep striking out time after time again, all they see is other hunters out on a property or whatnot.
They get discouraged.
And then there goes your Pittman-Robertson Act dollars, the excise tax that we all pay on our hunting gear. They're not going to buy any more hunting gear. So we need, as the hunting public, we need to be aware of that anytime you can protect a public hunting area, maybe donate some money. In Wyoming, you can donate to the hunter management program and stuff so they have more money to lease. Keep that in mind, because it's they're not making any more land.
No.
It seems to me they're shutting everywhere I hunt, whether it's South Dakota, Kansas, Montana. It's just more and more getting shut down. And those young hunters, or new hunters, they need to have a good experience every few times out, or they're not going to continue to hunt. They can sit at home, watch it on YouTube. So, well,
the corner crossing that just got legalized opened up a lot of land in Wyoming and across. Well, I would imagine this will set case law for the rest of the country.
I'm hoping it does.
Yeah.
Because it was the 10th Federal Circuit, which is basically south of us. I'm hoping it goes north and northwest too.
Yeah. I'm not sure how this works. I mean, do you have to bring like a little ladder? I mean, how does this work?
They never really said. I just
because you can cross the airspace, but you can't. If you think about crossing a corner on a barbed wire fence, your feet cannot step foot on that private land, or else you are trespassing, criminal trespass. So do you need to rig up some sort of ladder? Is there going to be a new market for something to cross fences? I mean, this is uncharted territory we're in, but it literally opens millions of acres of access on checkerboarded property.
Well, for an example, just north of here in Montana, half the BLM land is landlocked. Half of that land that you and I own, we can't access it. And to me, I mean, I understand in some situations, but I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying for the management of that land.
Yeah.
So I know the ranchers are utilizing it and they should continue their leases and stuff. I don't have a problem with that, but again, in this day and age where so much land is being shut down to the average hunter, there's got to be ways we can open up this land that we own, that we actually own this land. And it's not just BLM, it's there's Forest Service BLM, state lands, it goes on and on down the water, the Army Corps of Engineers has lands like that. So,
well, Wyoming shut down. They passed some legislation last year that really shut down bear hunting for me. Is on state land, you have to now ask whoever has the grazing lease on that state land if you can put a bear bait in. And that, I had a bear bait on state land. Well, now I have to figure out who has the grazing lease on that, and then I have to get their permission to have bear bait. And now it made it to where I can't really do my bear bait on state land because of this extra loophole. Because the people that have the grazing rights don't want bear baits on, in proximity to their cattle.
And some of the issues with this coming about, again, is more people are wanting to hunt public lands. So there's more pressure on them. And I mentioned to you, I went to a meeting just a couple of days ago about the same, it was this exact same situation. In some of these lands, there's nothing written, like a Wyoming Constitution, the state lands, nothing written about hunting. It's all about making money. And that's why, they had a big fight up here last summer over a piece that they were going to actually swap, but it was a piece of really good land, almost acre for acre, actually a little more, but for just cheatgrass, cruddy stuff. And again, hunting doesn't even come into play when you start reading all the stuff on so many of these properties that
it's a real concern.
But it's just a huge concern. And as I'm getting older and older, and I see it too, because I can't go into the backcountry as much or far maybe as I want to. And in another 10 years, I definitely won't be doing that. And the average hunter's overweight to begin with. That's just a national statistic. But their time is a constraint too. They're maybe not in top shape. They do to go up to the mountain here and get into elk. It takes several days. It's just not something you can necessarily drive up in an hour or two after school or after work, get into elk. It happens, but it's not a everyday thing. And to get to those places, it's a challenge.
Well, the vertical feet alone you'll climb, in 4 hours in these mountains will drop the jaw of a lot of people. It is hard, and they're unforgiving mountains if you're not used to them. Especially if you're coming from the Midwest or something, and you're looking at 1,800 vertical foot, and I have to do what, down and back? That's my afternoon hunt. Is you're gonna climb and drop, or drop and climb, and it's a lot of steep country, and it's not easy to navigate, and it does also have limits access.
So there's got to be lands available for people to have somewhat easy hunts that they're going to find some success on. You can't just keep having people buy a hunting license and then they're going to go for a walk in the park every day and not bring anything out of it.
I had somebody ask me last week on social media, hey, I want to come to Wyoming and hunt whitetail. And I said, well, do you have somewhere you can hunt? They're like, well, I was going to hunt public. And I'm like, well, 99% of the whitetail habitat is on private land. So, I don't want to tell you not to put in for a whitetail tag, but where are you going to hunt? Because the habitat for the whitetail deer is not on public for the most part, especially in Sheridan County. The rest of the state, you'll have small pockets where you'll find that habitat, but same with the turkey habitat. It's a lot of that habitat is privately held. And so their access is always an issue, especially, when you look at certain species. And then those areas that do have small pockets of habitat, they are very hunted. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of competition with people. And so it is tough. I think, some of the resources like Onyx is doing, where they have Hunt and Fool. When you have an elite membership, you have Hunt and Fool, which you can go in and you can research these states. And those teams have boots on the ground, people researching. They give you a lot of information. And then they have their hunt reminders where you can go in, and then it'll let you know when you need to apply for tags. And then they have their draw odds, and then you can look at, okay, well, someday I'd like to hunt Montana for elk, when you can go into these e-memberships on your Hunt and Fool and look at, where are some good areas? What is the terrain like? What is it like on the ground? And from that kind of 1,000-foot level, kind of get an idea of what you'd be in for. So you can start banking these hunts, or looking at, extending, your time invested into drawing certain tags. Or, hey, physically I can't do that elk hunt, but I might be able to go out in the desert and do a desert elk hunt where there's more roads and flatter terrain. And, these resources are there to help us, but it does
require work.
Yeah.
You know, you have to invest your time, effort, and energy into finding these spots. They don't find themselves, talking to people. And then you have to make that also commitment of donating money to the states every year until you have the opportunity to draw. That's just part of it.
When I do elk seminars, I do several on the East Coast, but I tell the audience right away, or at the end of it usually, but if there's young people in the audience, I'll just say, you as parents, if your kids, you think they're ever going to want to hunt elk in the West, the minute they can be able to buy preference and bonus points, you should start doing it. And I know it's an expense, and maybe you can't do all 10 states or whatever, but pick 3. Pick Arizona, Nevada, Montana, or whatever. You know, you're 2 or 3 and build. And that's what I did with my son. He's in the Army right now, but when he gets out, he's going to be able to start cashing in and do some pretty good hunts by the time he's 40 years old, and not like me when I'm going to be 60 or 70 or 80 and in a wheelchair.
Well, my cousin moved to Wyoming, and he was here for 3 years and drew sheep tags, so I pretty much just hate him. But, you know,
I have not done
there's also that kind of dumb luck that, you know, you can fall into. You can some of those random draws. But if you really are invested and you want to do the DIY hunting, there are a lot of tremendous resources out there, but it does require work.
It requires research, and then once you get the tag, there's a ton of work involved. So.
Yeah, and onX does make it a lot easier. You know, I'm pretty new to the state of Wyoming, obviously, and so I'm using it all the time to figure out where access points are, where roads are, where trails are, where's water, where can I, all of these things. And it's been a huge resource for me. Some of the places that I hunt now, there is no trails, and so you're finding access and you're building your own routes, and it's years of discovery of mistakes and we got to turn around and take the pack string another way, or whatever.
Especially with horses.
Yeah, and it's a big effort, and then finding suitable feed and water, and so all of those things are considerations, and having these digital tools really help. But your video library, I was on your website, which is just markkayser.com, right?
Yeah.
Tremendous resource from, how to check your zero on your rifle, which is super basic, to all the things beyond. And, if you guys are out there listening, watching, and you want kind of that next step, or you're looking for tips and tactics, your website is such a tremendous resource. That is truly a labor of love that you've put together there.
And then I like to tell people, if they want to go day to day with what I'm doing during the week or whatever, just go to my social media, and usually I tie a tip into almost all my posts. I do a lot. What I refer to my life as the hunting life. I mean, whether I'm in my office, I'm working on hunting. When I'm outside, I'm hunting, and so it's just that simple. It's the hunting life, and you're going to be able to see what I've been up to, what I'm doing. Just stuff we've been sharing right here, maybe some little thing will sit in their mind, embed in their mind. And it's like, oh yeah, maybe I will do that on the next hunt. So yeah. And if you have questions, you message me. I try to get back to you, if not that day, but within the next day or so.
Yeah, no, you offer such a resource for folks. And then, if they can, sit down, if they're NRA members, they read your articles. And if they're not, get on your website and peruse that, follow you on social media. And it's especially if there's a hunt specific that y'all have questions about, reach out to people, podcasts and stuff. Like hunting mule deer. This mule deer last year just ruined my life. So I started listening to every podcast that Mike Duplan did.
Oh, yeah.
Mike is one of the greats in mule deer hunting. And I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to kill this big deer? And man, I was so close. It was, yeah.
I've been right there a lot of times.
I'm gonna try year 2. Hopefully, I can find him again. But regardless, that's what drives us and keeps us out there. And there's so many people with great resources. You provide such a resource, and you're such a great asset to our community here in Sheridan. And I really appreciate you sitting down. And your social media handle is just your name, correct? Or is it under Extreme Pursuits? I can't remember.
I tag it that Extreme Extreme Pursuits, but everything's
just Mark Kayser.
Mark Kayser.
And that's Kayser.
Yeah.
So you guys can find Mark online. Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy writing season. And I know you'd rather be shed horn. We literally had to look at the weather last week. We're like, well, and see what the weather's going to be doing if we're going to do this. So it's a good weather day. So thank you for sitting down. I appreciate it. And all of you, thank you for tuning into this episode of the Wild and Uncut podcast, brought to you by Ruger, Marlin, SCI, and OnX Hunt. So you guys, if you want to save 20% on an OnX membership and take advantage of some of those application tools we talked about during the podcast, use code WILD20 during your checkout and you're going to save 20%.
When conditions get tough on a mountain hunt, your gear must be tougher. Making every opportunity count means selecting equipment that will not fail. Any condition, anywhere, Hornady Outfitter ammunition is designed to perform. Available in a wide range of cartridges from .243 to .375 Ruger. When you're looking for a hard-hitting, deep-penetrating bullet and cartridge that performs in the most rugged environments, look no further than Hornady Outfitter ammunition. Thank you all for listening to the Wild and Uncut podcast. If you would like to hear more, be sure to not only watch, but subscribe to my Pursue the Wild digital series airing on Carbon TV and YouTube. And while you're at it, follow me at Kristy Titus on Facebook and Instagram.